After my parents' funeral was over and I was finally able to catch my breath, my husband suddenly said something shocking. I want a divorce. You're broke and I don't want you in my life anymore. I couldn't comprehend what he meant and couldn't even respond. Didn't you hear me? What, are you deaf too? That'd be just pathetic. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I don't understand what you mean. It's exactly what it sounds like. I'm divorcing you and marrying your sister because she's the one who inherited your parents' money. Those words made everything clear to me. I see. Got it. I glanced at my husband's smug face as he handed me the divorce papers already signed by him and started planning my next steps. My name is Jackie. I've been married for 2 years now. I met my husband Paul at work. Paul was transferred to my department and became my subordinate. As we spent more time together, he confessed his feelings and we started dating. A few years later, he proposed and we finally got married. By then, we were in our late 30s and had decided not to have children. One reason was that I didn't want to give up my career. Our parents were initially against it, but after much convincing, they finally came around. However, Paul's parents couldn't accept one thing. While Paul remained an employee, I had been promoted to a managerial position. No matter how much we tried to explain, they would only say things like, a woman should quit her job and focus on the household, or it's wrong for a woman to outrank a man. I had been with the company since I graduated college, but Paul joined mid-career only a few years ago, so this situation was inevitable. Even with this explanation, they stuck to calling it wrong. At first, Paul would say I joined later, so it can't be helped, trying to downplay the situation. But as time passed, influenced by his parents' constant nagging, he began to echo their sentiments, saying, it's not right for you to be in a higher position than me. While things at work seemed fine on the surface, the atmosphere at home became increasingly strained. Paul, enough is enough. If it bothers you so much that I'm your boss, why don't you ask to transfer back to your old department? What? Are you serious? I left my old department because they were jealous of my talent. Suggesting to send me back there just shows how heartless you are. Heartless? Really? But isn't the issue that you don't like having a woman as your boss? I've been entrusted to manage this department, so I can't exactly ask for a transfer. The only option is for you to move. There it is again. You're belittling me, aren't you? You're rubbing it in that you have a position of power and I don't. No matter how many times we had this conversation, it always devolved into arguments about whether I was belittling him, and nothing ever got resolved. Meanwhile, my phone would buzz daily with messages from Paul's mother demanding things like quit your job or give up your position. I once asked Paul to get his mother to stop, but he brushed me off, saying she's just speaking the truth. Then one day I received a call that changed everything. Hey Jackie, how have you been? It was from Mel, my childhood best friend and confidant. Mel, long time no talk. I'm doing okay, what's up? I'm coming back to town for a bit and thought we could grab some coffee. Mel and I went from preschool all the way through college together. You could call us inseparable. After college, Mel took a job out of state, and the last time we saw each other was at our respective weddings. That sounds great. When are you coming back? This weekend. I'll be staying at my parents' place for a week. Perfect. I don't have any plans this weekend, so let's meet up then. I made plans with Mel and hung up the phone. When Paul got home, I told him about meeting Mel. He didn't take it well. Must be nice, huh? Having all this free time to see friends. Free time? I haven't seen Mel in years, and I haven't gone out in ages. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say. You go out with your coworkers for drinks every week. Doesn't that count? That's different. My outings are for work. Team bonding. It's not like I have a choice. Fine, if you say so. Either way, I'm going out this weekend, so just deal with it. I realized arguing with Paul was a waste of time. Instead, I focused on making dinner, ignoring his complaints. If Paul's so-called team bonding drinks were actually for work, then as his boss, wouldn't I also be invited? Yet he only ever talks about his good buddies from work. How could he call that professional communication? I pushed down my frustration and concentrated on finishing dinner. Then the weekend arrived. I dressed up a bit and got ready to go out. Paul muttered complaints under his breath as I got ready, but I ignored him completely. Not wanting to spend another minute around him, I left the house early and arrived at the cafe 20 minutes ahead of schedule. I checked my phone to see if Mel had texted me when I heard a notification chime. Maybe it's Mel, I thought, but it was a text from Paul. I'm staying at my parents' place tonight. That was all it said, one simple sentence. I could already imagine the reason. He didn't want to deal with any of the household chores. Not that I expected much from him anyway. If anything, I was a little relieved. It meant I wouldn't have to rush home and cook dinner. Got it. I sent a quick reply and focused on waiting for Mel. She showed up about 10 minutes later. Sorry, did I keep you waiting? It's fine. I haven't been here long. Well, I just got here too, didn't I? We both laughed. I suddenly realized it had been ages since I'd laughed like that. Jackie, is there anywhere you like to go? I can't think of anything right now. How about we just grab a coffee somewhere and catch up? Perfect. Let's try that cafe over there. I followed her gaze and saw a cozy-looking cafe that seemed new. Sure, let's go. Mel and I headed inside. It was relatively empty, probably because of the time of day. The barista told us we could sit anywhere, so we picked a quiet corner table. We ordered our drinks and settled in. So, how have you been? How have I been? That's pretty broad. Where do you want me to start? Work, your husband, anything. Work's been great, honestly. I got promoted and I really feel like I'm making an impact. Work is fulfilling in ways I never imagined. I can say with pride that I truly love what I do. Being a woman in management, doesn't that get you a lot of flack from the men? Oh, definitely. When I first got the position, the backlash from my male colleagues was awful. But since I earned it on merit, they couldn't openly criticize me. Now, though, the dust has settled and no one says anything. Yeah, these days, it's not an issue anymore, so work's a lot easier. I recently got promoted too, and now I outrank people who've been there longer than I have. It's caused some jealousy. Really? But I know you, Mel. You can handle any challenge that comes your way. Absolutely. There's no way I'm letting those people drag me down. Mel had always been strong-willed, and I lost count of times her determination had pulled me through tough situations. So if work's going great, does that mean there's trouble with Paul? That's Mel for you. She always knew when something was off. I took a sip of my coffee, buying myself a moment to think. Paul can't stand the fact that I'm in a higher position than he is. Ah, I see where this is going. Since Paul joined the company mid-career, it would take him years to catch up to my level, if he ever could. But quitting my job just to soothe his ego wasn't an option. I sighed deeply. This really sounds like something Paul needs to come to terms with himself. We spent the rest of the afternoon catching up before saying our goodbyes. Paul had gone to his parents' house, so I came home to an empty house that night. And yet I didn't feel lonely at all. In fact, the house felt more peaceful without him. After a rare day out, I went to bed early, exhausted but content. The next evening, Paul came home. Hey, the man of the house is back. Welcome home. Were you out drinking? Yeah, a coworker invited me out. It was a good time. You went out with your friend too, so don't give me any grief about it. I'm not saying anything, but next time, let me know beforehand. I made dinner for you, you know. Oh, stop nagging. A wife should be able to anticipate her husband's needs without being told. There's no point arguing with Paul anymore. I bit my tongue and said nothing. Paul was drunk out of his mind, but managed to stumble into the shower before crashing on the bed. I wrapped up the dinner I'd made for him untouched. With Paul sprawled across the bed, I had no choice but to sleep on the couch instead. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering, am I truly happy living life like this? Maybe it was talking to Mel that made me question everything. And just a few months later, my fragile happiness would come crashing down. It was my day off, and I was relaxing at home when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number. I thought it might be a scam and almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. Hello, who's calling? Is this Jackie Carter's phone? Yes, it is. As the officer spoke, my vision blurred and everything around me seemed to vanish. I could hear the officer's voice on the other end, but his words barely registered. By the time I snapped out of my daze, the call had already ended. I couldn't figure out what to do. My legs moved on their own as I paced around the room, my mind racing. Just then my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen and saw it was Mel calling. Hey Jackie, is this a bad time? Mel, I don't know what to do. I told her about the call I just received from the police. You need to get to the hospital right now. I'll meet you there. Okay, be careful getting there. I grabbed my bag, which I always kept packed with essentials, and hurried to my car. The officer's call had been to inform me that my parents had been involved in a devastating accident, and that they didn't make it. I drove as fast as I could to the hospital they directed me to. Until I saw it with my own eyes, I couldn't accept that it was real. The The 20-minute drive felt like an eternity, every second dragging on as my mind replayed the officer's words. When I arrived at the hospital, I checked in at the front desk and was directed to where my parents were. A storm of conflicting emotions swirled inside me. I didn't want to face the truth, but at the same time I needed to see them. Finally, I saw them. The reality hit me like a tidal wave, and the tears began to flow uncontrollably. A few minutes later, the doctor who had attended to my parents and the officer who had called me approached. Once they finished explaining what had happened, my legs gave out and I collapsed into a chair in the waiting room. Just then a voice called out behind me. "Hey, where are your parents?" The person speaking was none other than Paul. I didn't have the strength to speak. I just shook my head. "So they're gone, huh? Guess there was no point in me rushing over then." His callous words made my eyes widen in shock. How could he say something so heartless to someone who had just lost both parents? How can you say something like that? It's not like there's anything I can do now. I'm heading back to work. Without another word, Paul turned and walked out of the hospital. About half an hour later, Mel arrived at the hospital. "Jackie, are you okay?" She sat down beside me and gently rubbed my back. "I'm all alone now." Mel didn't say a word. She just stayed by my side. She didn't bombard me with questions, and I was so grateful for that. Both of my parents were only children, so I had no aunts or uncles to turn to. With my grandparents long gone, I truly had no close relatives left. The only person I could technically call family now was Paul. With Mel's help, I managed to organize and hold my parents' funeral. You'd think Paul would have helped, but he spent the whole time on his phone. When I asked for his assistance once, he brushed me off with, "It's got nothing to do with me." I couldn't be more grateful to Mel. After the funeral, while I was at my parents' house sorting through their belongings alone, a man came to visit. When I listened to what he had to say, I was completely stunned. A few days later, we all gathered at the house. Me, my husband Paul, the man who had visited, and my estranged sister Pamela, who had been out of contact for years. It's been a while, hasn't it? How have you been? If I wasn't alive and kicking, I wouldn't be here, would I? Pamela looked shockingly different, almost unrecognizable. She now had a youthful, almost doll-like appearance that made her look younger than me. It was such a departure from the sister I remembered that, at first, I didn't even realize it was her. The lawyer who had visited earlier confirmed that this woman was indeed my sister. "By the way, your husband's pretty handsome. What do you think, Paul? Wouldn't you rather ditch her and be with me?" I couldn't believe Pamela had the audacity to flirt with Paul right in front of me. To make matters worse, Paul didn't look entirely opposed to the idea. I couldn't help but sigh. "Thank you all for coming today. Your parents left a will before they passed, which is why I've arranged this meeting." It seemed my parents had prepared this will long ago, back when they were still young. Yes, so they actually came through for once. How much are we talking about? Yes, how much is Jackie's family fortune worth? And how much will she be getting? Both Paul and Pamela's eyes lit up with greed at the mention of an inheritance. Let me read the will now. As the lawyer began to read, someone's phone rang loudly. Seriously? Who's calling now? Ugh, fine, I'll take it outside. You guys keep going. With that, she strutted out of the room. Shall we continue? The lawyer began to read the will out loud. It stated that all assets and property were to be inherited by the younger daughter. Wait, so that means... Paul turned to look at me. Seeing my stunned expression, he quickly pieced together who had inherited everything. A smirk crept across his face. Once the lawyer finished explaining the details of the inheritance, its value, and what it entailed, he left the house. He had a sister? Yes, though we cut ties a long time ago and lost contact. My parents and I considered her as good as gone, and she's gorgeous. If I'd met her before marrying you, I definitely would have gone for her instead. What are you trying to say? Let me be straight with you. I want a divorce. So that smug grin was because he had already made up his mind. I stared at him, trying to process what I was hearing. Look, let's be honest. You're plain at best, but your sister is drop-dead gorgeous. And you? You got nothing now. Well, she just inherited $3 million. What are you even saying? My sister? I was about to correct him that Pamela was my older sister, not my younger. But Paul interrupted me. We're done. You're broke, and I don't want you here anymore. His sudden declaration left me momentarily speechless. What? Didn't you hear me? Are you deaf too? That would just be pathetic. Wait a minute, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Exactly what it sounds like. I'm divorcing you and marrying your sister because she's the one who's getting the inheritance. Those words made everything painfully clear. The lawyer's mention of the younger daughter referred to me, but Paul had clearly mistaken Pamela for the younger sibling. Given her surgically enhanced appearance, I could see how he might confuse her for someone younger. I see. Understood. It's late today, so I'll pick up the divorce papers tomorrow. No need, I've already got them right here. He pulled a set of divorce papers from his bag, already filled out and signed by him. Wow, you really came prepared. I've been carrying them around just in case. I took the papers from him, seeing his signature neatly in place. What a thorough planner, I thought bitterly as I added my own signature. There, it's done. Once I submit this, we're officially divorced. There's no shared assets to divide, right? We've always kept our finances separate. That's right, and thank goodness for that. I got the papers after signing them. I have some errands near the courthouse tomorrow, so I'll go ahead and submit the papers. I'll let you know once it's done. The house is in your name, so I'll move out. I'll pack tonight and be gone by tomorrow. If you can submit the papers tonight, even better. I'll stay at my parents' tonight, so make sure you're out by tomorrow. And don't take anything that belongs to me. Of course I wouldn't. Paul smirked smugly, and I resisted the urge to say something biting as I turned to leave the room. At that moment, Pamela returned to the living room, having finished her phone call. What's going on? Are we done here? So what's my share of the inheritance? According to the will, everything goes to you. What? Seriously? Oh, that's amazing. Oh, and by the way, I'm thinking about marrying Paul. Talk about a win-win. I get the money and the guy. Life couldn't be better. Ignoring her entirely, I grabbed my things and headed straight for the courthouse. Oddly enough, I felt no sadness, no regret. Instead, a sense of relief washed over me. I handed over the signed divorce papers at the desk and officially ended my marriage to Paul. While I was there, I filed a non-acceptance notice to block any future marriage registration attempts by him. Then I called Paul. Hi, it's me. I just submitted the divorce papers. Great. See, you can be useful sometimes if you try. Now I can marry your sister. I could hear Pamela cheering in the background. And by the way, I'm the younger sister. I dropped the truth like a bomb on his misplaced confidence. Wait, what? What do you mean? You seem to be under a massive misunderstanding, so let me clarify. Pamela is my older sister, and I'm the younger sister, meaning I'm the one who inherited everything from my parents. Paul's stunned silence told me everything I needed to know. What? No. I just assumed that. No one told me that. Don't you remember? When we met my parents, I told you I had an older sister who was estranged. I'd been completely upfront about Pamela back then, but clearly, Paul hadn't listened. I don't know if I remember hearing that. So the woman I'm here with, she's broke? She didn't get anything? That's exactly right. Damn it, Jackie, I was wrong. I need you. Please, don't leave me. Come back. Let's work this out. What? You said you were going to marry me. That was only because I thought you got the inheritance. I was never actually interested in you. Their shouting match erupted over the phone, their greed now turning them against each other. Sorry, but the divorce is already finalized. You and I are strangers now. We can fix this. Just tell them it was a mistake. It's already been processed. There's no going back. Let's just remarry. Since we were married before, it should be quick. Unfortunately for you, I also filed a block on any future marriage registrations. Better luck next time. Why would you? Well, I'm going to hang up now. Oh, and don't bother trying to come here tonight. I've locked the door and you won't be able to get in. Paul was still ranting, desperately trying to salvage some control, but I hung up without hesitation. I met up with Mel, my closest friend, and told her everything that had happened. Without hesitation, she offered to help me pack and move. After only 2 years of marriage, I didn't have much to pack. Most of what I owned could fit into just a few boxes. Thankfully, with my parents' house now in my name, I had a place to go and wasn't worried about finding somewhere to live. I planned to take all the appliances I had purchased myself. The idea of leaving anything for Paul to use was intolerable, and I didn't have any bulky furniture, so between my car and Mel's, we managed the entire move without hiring anyone. With the door securely locked, ensuring Paul couldn't come barging in, I finally felt like I could sleep soundly that night. The next day, I explained the situation to my boss and requested time off, then loaded the last of my belongings into my car. Despite everything, I couldn't help feeling a faint twinge of sadness as I remembered the few kind moments Paul and I had shared early on. But those feelings quickly faded as I drove to my parents' house, my new sanctuary, and began unloading my things. My parents had kept my old room spotless, so all it needed was a light dusting before I settled in. Thank you so much for helping me, Mel. Oh, don't even mention it, Jackie. If I can't help my best friend when she needs me, what kind of friend am I? After unpacking the essentials, I made us both some tea and we sat down to rest. Forget about Paul for a second. What's going on with Pamela? I don't know. She was so sure she'd marry him, but I have no idea how things have played out since. There's a chance she might show up here. You're right, that could happen. But your sister doesn't have a key to the house, does she? She can't just barge in uninvited, right? That's true, but I'll make sure everything is locked up tight just in case. Mel and I spent the rest of the morning enjoying a rare moment of calm. In the afternoon, we headed to the lawyer's office to finalize the inheritance process. Thanks to my parents' detailed will, the process went smoothly, and there was no way Pamela could challenge it. I felt an enormous weight lift off my shoulders. The lawyer explained that the will had been drafted shortly after Pamela had cut ties with the family. It seemed my parents had never truly forgiven her for abandoning us. Their anger and heartbreak were clear in the wording of the will. Well done, Jackie. At least you can breathe a little easier now. Yeah, you're right. You're not alone in this, okay? If you ever need help, you can always count on me. Thank you, Mel. I'm so lucky to have a friend like you. We headed back to my parents' house, both relieved the legal matters were behind us. As we pulled into the driveway, a shadowy figure came into view near the front door. Who's that? You weren't expecting anyone today, were you? Maybe it's a delivery driver? But we were both wrong. Standing there bold as ever was Pamela. As soon as we parked, she marched toward us, her heels clicking furiously against the pavement. Where have you been? At the lawyer's office? What about you? I didn't come here to play nice with you. Just give me a share of that inheritance. You got $3 million. What's a measly 100,000 to you? You don't get to have a say in this. Why would they leave all their money to someone like you? Their money is ours as their children. I have just as much right to it as you do. Except their will says everything is mine, so no. You don't have any rights here. Besides, you disappeared for years, and now you want to waltz back in and demand money? Life doesn't work that way. Pamela bit her lip in frustration, her usual haughty demeanor cracking under the weight of reality. By the way, how's Paul? I'm letting him stay with me since he has nowhere else to go. At his place? Yeah. Sounds more like he's letting you stay, not the other way around. Shut up and just give me the money. No. Give it to me. No. We went back and forth like that, a futile battle of stubbornness. Amidst the argument, the faint wail of police sirens cut through the air. At first, I didn't think much of it, but the sound grew louder and closer. I looked around wondering if something was happening nearby, but we were the only ones causing a commotion. And then, to my surprise, the patrol car pulled up right in front of the house. What? What's this? Sorry, Jackie. While you two were yelling, I called the cops. What? Mind your own business. The officer stepped out of the car, addressing us with calm authority. We received a report of a loud dispute. Would that be you? That's probably us. I'm going to need to hear what's going on here. Pamela was escorted into the patrol car while Mel and I stayed inside to give our statements. I explained everything to the officers, starting with my parents' passing and ending with Pamela's sudden return. Mel was questioned separately, and from what I could tell, she answered everything honestly. Apparently, Pamela had caused a scene in the patrol car, and now she was facing charges for obstruction of justice. She was taken straight to the station, leaving us in peace at last. By the time it was all over, the sun had dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with muted shades of orange and purple. Mel and I were utterly drained. I'm so sorry, Mel. You didn't need to get dragged into all this mess with my sister. Don't apologize. I told you, you can rely on me. Why don't I just stay with you here tonight so we can both rest easy? If you're sure, then I'll take you up on that. I let her take my bed while I settled into my parents' room. The next morning I received an unexpected call from the police station. The old bed felt unfamiliar yet strangely comforting, as if their presence lingered in the quiet corners of the house. Pamela had named me as her emergency contact and was requesting my help to secure her release. I had no intention of bailing her out. Instead, I gave them Paul's contact information. Let him deal with the chaos he'd chosen. With no time to dwell on the situation, I got ready and headed to work. I couldn't afford to miss any more days. Paul still worked at my office, but I steeled myself and walked in with my head held high. I refused to let him intimidate me. What caught me off guard, however, were the stares from my coworkers. The way they looked at me, like I was some kind of scandal, set my nerves on edge. Their expressions carried a mix of judgment and curiosity, the kind reserved for someone caught in a salacious rumor. "Hey, what's going on?" I stopped a coworker nearby, hoping to get some clarity. "Well, Paul's been telling people you cheated on him, and that's why you got divorced." Outrage boiled in my chest. Without hesitation, I laid out the truth to my coworker and asked them to help spread it. When I saw Paul finally arrive, I requested a private meeting in the conference room. "So you've been telling people I cheated on you, and that's why we got divorced? What are you talking about? I never said anything like that." "Oh, playing dumb, are we? Well, two can play at that game. You don't have any proof. Accusing me without evidence is slander. I could sue you for this." "By all means, go ahead and sue me. But you don't have proof I cheated, do you? Meanwhile, I have plenty showing you tried to move on to my sister, and I'm curious to see how that'll play out for you." Paul's face turned pale, and he stammered out excuses, his arrogance evaporating. "Fine, I'll stop spreading the rumors. Just don't take me to court. An apology now means nothing to me. You're not getting off that easy." Leaving him to wallow in his humiliation, I walked out of the conference room without a backward glance. I decided that if I could clear my name, I wouldn't bother pursuing legal action. From that day on, Paul started going around the office, correcting his lies and admitting the rumors were false. The truth spread quickly. It wasn't me who betrayed anyone. Paul had left me, blinded by greed and foolish ambitions. Within days, the truth about my divorce with Paul became common knowledge across the office. The judgmental stares I had endured turned into looks of embarrassment, and one by one my coworkers approached me with apologies. "I'm so sorry, Jackie. I shouldn't have believed those rumors without asking you." Hearing their sincere apologies and seeing their lowered heads gave me a sense of relief. The truth was finally out. Meanwhile, Paul's reputation crumbled. His lies about me and his underhanded attempts to tarnish my character painted him as nothing more than a despicable opportunist. The pressure became unbearable for him. Within a few months, he resigned, unable to face the scorn of our coworkers. After leaving his job, Paul moved back in with his parents, relying on them to support him. Paul's parents lived on their modest retirement savings, and now, with another mouth to feed, their financial strain must have been significant. But the irony wasn't lost on me. They had enabled Paul's entitlement and immaturity, and now they were reaping the consequences. One evening, after weeks of silence, I received a call from Paul's parents. "Jackie, please, can you reconcile with Paul?" When I was married to Paul, they had never missed a chance to criticize me. Now that his care had become their burden, they were shamelessly asking for my help. There was no way I would let them exploit me again. I blocked their number without hesitation. Paul, too, tried to plead for a second chance. His messages were filled with hollow promises and self-pity, but I blocked him as well. Even though they knew where I lived, neither Paul nor his parents ever dared to show up at my door. As for Pamela, after Paul reluctantly signed as her emergency contact, he quickly threw her out of his home, washing his hands of her. I heard through the grapevine that she had taken up work in the nightlife industry. Though her looks had once been an asset, age had caught up with her. She found herself relegated to behind-the-scenes roles, unable to compete with younger women. The last time I saw her, she was loitering near a shady nightclub, her makeup smudged and her expression hollow. After that, she vanished from my life completely. She had been a stranger to me for decades, and her absence now stirred no emotion. About 2 months after my parents' funeral, I had plans to meet with Mel for a quiet day of reflection. "Forget about Paul. He's history. You deserve someone who truly appreciates you." "No thanks, I'm done with marriage. From now on, my life belongs to my career." "Oh, don't close that door just yet. If you ever change your mind, let me know. I've got some great people I can introduce you to." "Maybe I will. I'll let you know if the mood ever strikes me." Even as I said it, deep down I knew that starting over romantically at 40 seemed far-fetched. At my age, falling in love again felt as distant as a childhood dream. Beautiful but improbable. But then I didn't need romance. My career was thriving. I had recently earned a promotion and was leading a team with confidence and pride. Devoting myself to work wasn't a consolation prize. It was a source of joy, purpose, and fulfillment. From time to time, I'd hear snippets about Paul's life after his humiliating resignation and retreat to his parents' house. He hadn't just lost his job. He had lost his social circle, his dignity, and whatever respect people once had for him. His parents, once indulgent, now found him to be a financial and emotional burden. I heard they had started voicing their frustration, realizing too late that their pampering had contributed to his downfall. Paul was isolated, not just from extended family, but from his entire community, whose judgment he could no longer escape. The cherry on top? I heard rumors that he had tried to reach out to me, begging for reconciliation, but my life no longer has space for him. As for Pamela, her attempts to rebuild her life were just as unproductive as Paul's. I hadn't heard from her since the encounter in front of my house, and I had no desire to change that. Some bridges are better left burned. Meanwhile, Mel was in the process of officially bringing my parents' house, which had once been the center of so many joyful memories. So are you sure? You're really planning to sell this house? Yes, it's true. I've decided it's time to let it go. Letting go of this house with so many memories of my parents tugged at my heartstrings. But the truth is, it's far too big for me to live in alone. There are so many rooms that go unused, and maintaining the entire place while working full-time is just not practical. Even with cleaning gadgets, there's only so much they can handle. This house is just too much for me alone. I'll stay here until the first anniversary of my parents' death, but after that, I'm thinking of moving closer to work. I remember coming here all the time when we were kids. It's going to feel strange knowing it's no longer yours. It's hard, but it's the only option that makes sense. Have you figured out where you'll sell it, or which real estate agency you'll use? No, I haven't decided yet. I plan to start looking into it after the anniversary. I see. Mel's thoughtful expression caught me by surprise. Hey, call me crazy, but what if you sold the house to me? What? Her suggestion completely floored me. Mel works out of state and her husband does too. I couldn't see why buying this house made sense for her. I mean, I appreciate the thought, but you work out of state. Living here would make things harder for you, wouldn't it? For now, yes, but my husband's getting transferred here next year. It's supposed to be his last company transfer, and we're planning to settle down in this area permanently. This might not be our forever home, but we're ready to set roots here for a long while. But this house is old. It might not be worth it. That's not an issue. We'll renovate. A little work will make it feel new again. I guess that's true. And of course, we'll go through the proper channels and pay market value. Are you sure about this? Of course. This house means so much to both of us, and my husband's transfer here feels like fate. Her words warmed my heart. Mel, thank you. There were still a few months until her move, so I decided to stay in the house for the time being. The thought of strangers living here had unsettled me, but knowing Mel would be the one taking over gave me peace of mind. At over 50 years old, the house was in definite need of some updates. Mel wanted to go through the proper real estate process, but I was inclined to simply hand it over to her. Knowing I could still visit this house whenever I wanted made me truly happy. In the months leading up to handing over the house to Mel, I spent my days reflecting on the countless memories of my parents that still lingered in every corner. The bitterness that had long weighed on my heart seemed to slowly dissolve, replaced by a calm acceptance of the past. Paul and Pamela were firmly in the past now, their hold on my life completely severed. As the day approached for Mel to officially take over the house, I found myself filled with mixed emotions. Letting go of the house felt bittersweet, but it also marked the beginning of something new, a fresh start. Take good care of this house, Mel. I know my parents would have wanted it to stay with someone who loves it as much as they did. Of course, I create so many memories here, I promise. The moment I handed over the keys and trusting her with the house, a strange lightness filled my heart. This house would now begin a new chapter, and so would I. Life has its storms, but beyond them lies a tranquil sea. Paul and Pamela both faced the consequences of the choices they had made. There was no need to look back. My future was waiting ahead, full of possibilities. For the first time in years, I felt free, truly at peace with myself and my life. As I settled into my new apartment and my new life, I found a happiness I had built with my own hands. I had chosen to live alone, but that didn't mean I was lonely. I had Mel's friendship, a fulfilling career, and a deep sense of pride in myself to carry me forward. Life goes on, and so will I, one step at a time. As I opened my window, a soft breeze brushed against my face, as if blessing this new chapter of my life. When I finally closed the door, I smiled. The future was bright.